Leadership development. I'm not talking about developing leaders for now. I'm talking about, are you developing your leaders for 2020? I'm talking about developing leaders who are contemporary, leaders who will move with times, because that is a real risk. Day to day is going to be different. Look at the difference over the weekend when we had the French and the Greek election results. Right? So leaders who are ready to face a future environment that's a lot more complex, volatile, ambiguous than what we have right now. Okay? Build your bench. If you cannot name for one position 2 or 3 possible successors, build your bench. Nothing guarantees more engagement and involvement than somebody that you send a signal to say, we trust in you to be one of our future leaders. Career advancement. This is another strategy that you need to look at to pursue, because this is one of those that actually haven't been fully leveraged. We have had career pathways, we have career structures, but looking at career from a perspective of life stages. If you were to ask yourself, at what point in time does your organization start looking at high potential? What would be the typical age group be? Shout to me a number. Typical age group that you look at identifying high potential. Sorry? Mid-20s, thank you. Traditionally mid-20s. Coming into 30s. If you were a female talent, what would be a competing interest? Sorry? Families, right? Marriage. And therefore, are we surprised that when we get into more mid to senior levels, we see less females? Smart organizations have discovered that women who have completed so-called their family obligations, by the time they get married, they have kids, they raise their kids, the kids are in elementary school, and when they come back in their late 30s into their 40s, they are more committed. And if they are capable to start with, they are as capable if you do not cold storage them during the 10 years that they are away. And they're actually ready to take on more challenges and be prepared to work with you than when it's much earlier when you got them in. So think about that as a possibility, and when you look at your plans for your leadership bench. Think about people that you have in the initial stages thought not possible. Ask yourself, why did we say that was not possible? Rethink that the potential may still be there, but because of certain life stage issues at that time, they weren't able to commit. But the potential is still the potential that you have right now that you can glean and work with. All right? Think about woven aspiration. What's woven aspiration? Woven aspiration is about talking to your talent. Just like this morning, we spoke about talking to your generation Ys. And we found that it is a very powerful strategy. We had one of our clients based in Shanghai, and he runs the exhibition business, pretty much like this sort of event management. And it's a very high energy kind of industry. And one of his key issues is that 85% of his workforce were Gen Y or younger. And he, however, has the highest retention rate in the whole industry. And one of the things that we worked with him over the years, which initially he resisted, was we told him every fortnight, spend half an hour with your talent group called Gen Ys. Spend 10 minutes, let them tell you what they've been doing. Spend 10 minutes, tell them what the organization has been doing, how we have been moving, etc. And the last 10 minutes, build woven aspiration. An aspiration where they can tell you where they want to grow, what do they want to be. And you can share with them, this is where the organization, how can we interlink our fate, in a sense, so that it is a woven aspiration that in as much as they succeed, you succeed. But one of the key issues is that it's going to take a lot of my time. But he realized now that it's worth it because from a stability perspective and an energy and engagement perspective, they run the business as if it is their business. Would you like that for your business? The last one is organizational culture. We can't run away from this because we do not just work alone on a 1 feet by 1 feet tile. We work within a context of people group. I'm not talking about organization as a building, but people groups. Organizations need to be evolving to be more flexible and dynamic. When you open the newspapers, how many of the reporting are happy, glorious stories versus the doom and gloom stories? Do you want more of that in the workplace or less of that? You want to go to a workplace that's light, that's dynamic, that's exciting. Right? That's one of the key pieces. Flexible and flexible in almost all ways. We think having work-life flexibility is flexible enough. Well, that's not exactly enough, particularly if you're just practicing very stipulated work-life flexibility. We have a publication that was made available a few years ago and it's still being available. Working together, this is probably the only Asia story told A to Z, tears, blood that has gone into it, how they put together work-life flexibility that cut attrition by 17%. Okay, so work at flexibility. The other thing to look at is tailor your employee value proposition. What would bring a mid-career into you would be very different from what would bring a new graduate to you. There may be some common threads, but what would differentiate them that makes it attractive? So tailor your employee value proposition. Certainly your core values will need to be the same, but your value proposition to your audience, your talent group, would probably need to be different. And just to give you the heads up, this fall we'll be having a publication called Managing Your Generations at Work. It is probably one of the first Asia-based, Asia-studied book on managing generations, and it tells the story of some of our clients and their staff on the interaction that work or not work for them. So please keep your heads up. If you want to be kept updated about that, send us an email. You'll get some of our details a little later. Have a diverse but inclusive workspace. That's going to be critical because that allows more innovation, more free in terms of openness to talk about things. So if you have a risk from a leadership, a talent, or a market perspective, people will not be afraid to bring it up. People will talk about it, and how can we manage that risk? Have a performance-driven organization. How many of us think we have a performance-driven organization? Thank you. How many of you think you have a performance-driven organization, but you still have people staying late because the boss has not left the office yet? So what we say and what we practice. All right? Do's. I'm going to give you a couple of do's. The first list of do's will be what you need to do yourself. You need to be empowered and be aware, first of all. So turn to the person next to you and tell them, this is for you. Say, this is for you. And this is for you. First thing is you need to have clarity. What exactly is your risk? Right? Not everybody faces the same risk. Then develop competence in that area. What exactly do I need to develop in terms of myself as a HR practitioner, as somebody that is dealing with people, right? And with competence and clarity, you will gain confidence. Confidence to talk about this to your senior managers, confidence to raise this to the board as an issue. Let me share with you, many years ago, about 7-8 years ago, when we first started with one of the firms, a HR director, fairly senior, very visionary, has been telling her board, say that we will have a generational issue. We need to watch the younger people. And they just took it as, shouldn't they be more like us? They should grow to be more like us. Well, one day, the CEO was on a plane, and he read this article from a business magazine called, "What Are You Doing About Why?" After he read the article, he came back and he asked this HR director, "What are we doing about why?" When all the while, the HR president has been telling them about it. So develop the clarity of what is it about, your competence and then your confidence. Raise the subject. And as you raise the subject, if there's anything that you're not sure of, you are within this community of HR practitioners. You have resources. You can tap onto LiveWorks online. There are things that you can actually get into to coach yourself about this. And the last thing is, it's a journey, it's commitment. Generations and gender and culture does not come overnight. It is something that we need to be consciously making decisions about. Okay, so it is for the longer term. As an organization, give them a dose of vitamin called the triple E. Every occasion that you can get your hands on, think about expose. Is this a place, a time that I can expose them to this new thing that's coming? Is this a time that I should be engaging them to be a little bit more active about this? Is this the time that I can actually empower them and let them take care of their team? So every time you get into a situation, think expose, engage, and empower. And then look at how you can prioritize in tandem with your business strategies. Right? Be reflective always with regards to issues, to leadership, talent, and market needs. Don't jump right in and offer what your neighbor next door is offering. Your workforce culture and workforce needs will be very different. Your risks might be very different. Don't neglect your stakeholders. Don't just charge ahead and then you realize that you have no animation that's coming right behind you. Don't think short term. Okay, so some do's and some don'ts. And then you say, wow, there's a lot to do. The last slide, the second last slide. I like this one by Tony. Courage, like fear, is a habit. So the more you take courage to do something, the more it becomes a habit. So turn to your neighbor and say, courage is a good habit. Yeah, you would need a lot of that. The last slide I have for you, if you are very busy, you say, tell me what are the first thing that I need to do. First, go and assess what is your risk. Then it will give you impetus how soon you want to get into some of this solutioning. All right, prepare your approach. And then expose and empower, engage and empower them. Okay, just repeat to your neighbor once. Expose, enable, and empower. If you like the deck, just drop us an SMS. It will be sent right to you. I just revised the deck last night, so they couldn't get this out to you on time. But it's been a pleasure. I am so happy to see all of you looking up, particularly after your lunch. So could you give everybody around here a round of applause? And thank you for your attention.